G'day, it's Rob from A Life That Travels, and today I'm in Hong Kong with Hafi Khan. Hafi, awesome to meet you.
Rob, it's a pleasure to have you in Hong Kong.
Thank you.
Welcome to Hong Kong.
It's great to be here. And so tell me, how hard is it to find coffee in Hong Kong? We've got a bit of a story, haven't we, this morning?
We definitely have a story in our first ever meeting. You'd think in the hustle and bustle of Hong Kong, you'll not only find a good coffee, but a coffee that is everywhere.
Yeah.
Especially at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But like you said, we have a great story to tell, which is we walked about 20 to 30 minutes in humid Hong Kong in the middle of the summer trying to find a coffee, and all the top of the range places are closed.
Including McDonald's.
Including McDonald's. Like when you have nowhere else to go, you choose to go to McDonald's when even McDonald's is closed. So interestingly, depending on where you are, you can always find a good coffee. I've been in Hong Kong for about 2 months now, and I'm yet to have a good coffee, which is pretty sad for someone from Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
From Melbourne and the culture, and my smashed avocados.
The smash and have, there we go. I've got so many things I could ask you about. Tell me about what it was like touching down in Hong Kong. Oh, sorry, and I should say, big shout out to the guys here at Black Sugar. So they've let us in early. We were like standing at the door looking desperate.
Yeah.
And they've let us in order to film this interview while they're waiting for customers. So, but tell me what it was like to touch down in Hong Kong for the first time.
I was incredibly excited. It was going to be my first time in Hong Kong, but as I'm here under the new Colombo Plan Scholarship, and one of the aspects of the scholarship is the opportunity you get to travel. So before arriving in Hong Kong, I spent a week in Singapore, and then I spent another week in Malaysia.
Oh wow!
Before I arrived in Hong Kong, so I was already into my top of cultural immersion, exploring and traveling, and I was in Hong Kong for something that is quite exciting for me, which is one of the projects I'm working on.
Yep.
And when I arrived in Hong Kong, completely different part of the world to Australia. You touch down, you come into the open air, and you come from a cold, rainy Melbourne to a warm, humid Hong Kong, and this is where your home is. And the first thing you want to say is, I'm going to be here for some time, and I want to call this place my home.
Nice.
Yeah. And I felt accepted straight away. I enjoyed my first week here to my now, what has been 2.5 months in Hong Kong.
Nice. So what was, let's talk about first impressions.
Yeah.
So what was your first impression of Singapore, and how was that different? And KL, for example. How are those impressions different from like Hong Kong?
All right. So when I arrived in Hong Kong, compared to my first impressions of somewhere like Malaysia or Singapore, is wherever I go, I always read up on the place and I research the hidden gems of the places, not so much your popular tourist places you can go to. And coming to Hong Kong, I think the biggest difference was finding, compared to the belief that people can be quite rude, I had a lovely encounter with the locals when I first arrived.
Yeah.
I got engaged with some language training when I arrived as well, and I would like to say that I've probably seen the best of Hong Kong.
Nice.
So lovely people, some really awesome food, some lovely places to visit in the CBD where the hustle and bustle is, and a bit far away, somewhere in the New Territories, for example, where the heavens of Hong Kong lie, I suppose. And that's different to somewhere like Singapore or Malaysia. Malaysia is a lot scattered in its different areas where you would like to visit in a short amount of time. And again, Singapore is very small, everything very accessible, but a different economic outlook to the trip that you go to.
So it seems like this is kind of like a really nice sized destination in that sense, right? That it's kind of like big enough that you've got plenty to go and explore, but not too crazy that you're never going to get around to see everything if you want to. Because how long are you here for?
I'm here for just over 5 months, but I totally agree with, and I share that sentiment as well. So sometimes you do want to escape the concrete jungle, but you get away to those mountains and then you look back and you look into the metropolis, and that's what you find amazing, is you escape the concrete jungle to only admire it from the distance. It's beautiful. That's what Hong Kong is. It is the Asia's metropolis. It's the place of the world where you have the most high-rises, and that is not just part of a number game. It's actually quite an experience of what those buildings entail, the way they contribute to the society, and how it brings a lot of people together in one place.
That's actually such a wonderful thing that you talk about. You know, this morning or last night we were talking. I kind of walked around Mongkok, this kind of shopping area, which is insane, right? Like it's just this throng of people and shopping and lights and colour. And this morning, kind of went down to the harbour and looked out across to the other side, where you've got all of those huge buildings you're talking about. There's nobody. It was like all calm and peaceful, and it's, I don't know, like what you say about, it's not just about the buildings, but what that represents. You know, the economic drive that creates, and the lives and the people that are inside those places is pretty incredible, right? So that must be pretty awesome, having that kind of energy around you all the time.
Absolutely. So you get the best of both worlds. In such a small place, you've got something like over 7 million people living in a very small area, but they all make it work, and they all make it live together in peace, and you get the hustle and bustle in the areas that you like to be. And then if you want to escape that, there is an opportunity for that as well. You can get on the ferry and discover the waters. You can go to the oceans, and for someone like Australians, they can have their home in Hong Kong.
Nice.
That's one way to put it.
Let's talk about what you're here to do.
Yeah.
So where are you studying, and what are you doing here?
So I am here as a new Colombo Plan Scholar for 2018 for Hong Kong, and I am studying at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, or more commonly known as PolyU. I am doing my study at the moment, which is a research project. So back home in Australia, I'm an honours student, and at the moment here, I'm a lead researcher on a vision science and optometry research. My background is optometry, and we're at the moment conducting a multi-centre, multi-population and international eye study, which we hope would be a pioneering study covering the topic that we're investigating.
This is like so cool. And sorry, you were saying Deakin University?
Deakin University in Australia,
Which campus are you on? You're in
I am
Melbourne?
So I'm at the Vaughan Ponds campus of Deakin University in Geelong, where you have the best of the surfing world, the best of your Torquay, and it's the place to be. Go check out Geelong.
Very, very good university, actually. I think I was saying to you outside, like, just such an incredible institution that's going places. And you know, tell me what it's like, the difference between like optometry that you've experienced at Deakin, studying at Deakin, and what you're seeing at PolyU. I know you've only been here for a relatively short period of time, but what's that kind of difference that you're seeing already?
So I think one of the biggest differences is, and it can be quite common between different medical fields, is the concept of high volume patients, and the difference that is in somewhere like Australia, where when you go through your clinical training and your optometry course, you may not be exposed to a range of, for example, eye conditions, a range of different patients, their demographics, their issue like ocular symptoms, whereas you come to somewhere like Hong Kong, where you've got high amount of people seeking and hoping to get care, and being able to respond to that demand, I think, and the way you come together to meet those challenges is probably the biggest difference I see. And it's quite interesting to learn how you can cope with a high demand of optometry care, because at the end of the day, the passion that drives optometrists is being able to save vision, spread vision, and hopefully prevent blindness, and to be able to deliver that is quite empowering. And if you can do it for a lot more people, I think that's just the best scenario for everyone and anyone involved.
It's such a fascinating discipline. I mean, just as you're talking there, I'm just thinking about the fact that I really know very little about my eye, a little bit about the kind of mechanics of it, I suppose, but it's something that you probably don't appreciate just how damn important it is until suddenly you have a problem, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Sure, I may have a vested interest in this, but I think if not the most important, is one of the greatest assets we have. The impact that we have without vision on our lives, on our quality of life, on our well-being, and on our dependency on being able to do things is probably by far the greatest, with or without vision. So, and it's just listening and experiencing the transformations people have had who've gone blind or been able to gain their vision back, and the impact that have had on their life. I think it's quite fascinating. People often think it's such a small part of the eye, how can it be so complex, or how can it contain so much detail? But I had the same outlook from the get-go, but a lot of things have changed along the way when I've learned about it, and I wouldn't go back. I absolutely love what I do. Awesome. And the passion has only grown with time.
Let's talk about the study you're doing.
Absolutely.
So, because this is incredible, actually. So you're saying, we were just chatting outside, and you're saying, you know, you started off kind of working on your honours project in Australia, and now this new Colombo Plan has just like, boom, like blown it up.
Yep, absolutely. So this was originally meant to be a small-scale study back home in Australia, and when the new Colombo Plan came on board, we had the funding available to us, so we really extended and reached out to our good friends in Hong Kong. We extended the scope of the project we were working on, and we not only extended the scope of it, but the aims, the research questions we had investigated from our initial plans to what we're doing right now. And so this is really a multi-site, multi-population eye study. It hasn't been done before, and when we hope to present our results, we quite hope to make a breakthrough within the way we treat different eye conditions, especially in the primary eye care.
Wow. I said,
wow. Well, that's probably going to be taken off now.
No, it's all good.
I'll tell you a little bit of the boring details of the project. So as you develop, your eyes become short-sighted or long-sighted, or you have nothing and you have good vision. People who essentially become short-sighted, they're at a higher risk of getting a number of eye diseases, for short-sightedness in particular. And what happens in short-sightedness is you have an eye, your eye has a size, and in short-sightedness your eye becomes larger.
Okay.
As your eye becomes large, it is stretched out, and that can quite affect the tissue of the eyes. So we now see that people who are, I'm gonna break it down really easily, okay? So in terms of some details about my project, so when you're born and when I'm born, we're all born with the blood vessels of our eyes, and people who become short-sighted or long-sighted, that doesn't happen at birth, that usually happens later in life during development. So the idea is that you're born with the blood vessels of your eye, but people who are, for example, short-sighted, they now have a much bigger eye. And now they have essentially the same amount of blood vessels, but a bigger eye. And we propose that there is a reduced density and a pressure on the eye to meet the demand and the blood and the nutrition supply of the eye, which is what puts short-sighted people at a risk of getting a lot more frequency of eye diseases.
That's huge.
That's it. Absolutely, and if we can find answers to that, that will be not only contributing to knowledge, but more importantly, it will be saving and it will be changing the ways we deliver care to our short-sighted people. So we're really investigating and studying if people who do have those longer eyes have a reduced blood supply to their eye.
Interesting, like blood vessel density.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so, I mean, that's where something like this opportunity to come here, like, so for those of you who don't know, you know, how scientific studies work, it's one thing to like conduct a scientific study like with one population of people, but where you can like replicate that or bring other populations, other nationality backgrounds, cultural groups, etc. into a study, you become more conclusive to some extent that the data is true. So this is huge for you.
I absolutely share that sentiment, because you can not only increase your sample size, for example, but things that are more important, for example, so to be able to establish this quite rigorously, you need people from all sorts of like with all degrees of short-sightedness, people who are just not like mildly short-sighted, but people who are very severely short-sighted. And the prevalence of short-sightedness, and especially special forms, like severe forms of short-sightedness in Australia, is very little. It's about 2 to 5%, but in somewhere like Hong Kong, it's about 25%. So, and the overall prevalence of short-sightedness in Australia is about 24%, but in Hong Kong, it's about 70%.
Wow.
So being able to find those people through convenient sampling in your normal population would have been quite a challenge to do in Australia, and we would not have been able to establish this relationship in a sizable and comparable number of groups if we had to do it only in Australia. So reaching out to Hong Kong not only makes our study more valid and rigorous, but essentially contributes to the generation of knowledge in the way that wouldn't have been possible if there was no new Colombo Plan.
So let's talk about then how important the new Colombo Plan has been in this whole adventure, so to speak, because fundamentally, if your study, because of the fact you've come here, you've got extra, more people involved, you've got different populations involved, you can be more conclusive in your evidence, you've got this breakthrough.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's why I do what I do, and I was actually the only optometry student from my university who reached out to the faculty, and I took a non-traditional path to the completion of my degree. So I've essentially added an extra year to my course because it was an area of interest that I had, and it was an unanswered question that I stumbled upon, and it was great to be able to take it upon myself and get the right supervisors on board and find the right answers in the right way. So absolutely.
How did you stumble across it?
So it was what we were learning in our classrooms, and essentially the prediction that by the year 2050, over half of the world's population is going to be short-sighted.
Wow.
And that's across the world. Now we need to better prepare for that, to be able to provide not only care to our patients, but prevent the trend of where the blindness and preventable blindness is going around the world. We need to reverse it, we need to bring it down, and that only happens if we generate the knowledge for what is unknown, prepare for what is known, and deliver the best outcomes for the population, not just in Australia or the Pacific, but around the world.
So the other thread I wanted to jump in on there as well, you said something I think which is critical, which is like, you put your degree, by completing your degree, back by a year in order to come here.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that, like that decision and how you came to that conclusion.
So if I could use a line, which is when hard work and initiative meets the perfect stroke of serendipity, that's probably how phrase my story. So traditionally in optometry courses, it's quite hard to get credits transferred over or have your external activities approved as part of your university course. So essentially what I had to do was I had to approach my faculty and say, this is what I want to be able to do. It was not back, but I persisted, and the way we went about it, I had to add an extra year to my course. And we did that, and we were able to then fit in this study, and that involved a lot of back and forth meeting, talking to our friends in Hong Kong if they would be happy to take us, talking to my faculty back home if they would be able to nominate some supervisors who would be experts in the field as well, designing the scope of the project, knowing that is it worth attempting to find something that has not been tested before, and if we have resources at our disposal to be able to conduct that experiment. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing was we didn't know which way our findings would go, and if we're investigating that something that actually has an answer, and you don't know until you perform an experiment, and if you don't find something, that is always a finding in itself.
Yeah, exactly, and that's important. Well, one last question then. So I want to ask, because this is a decision that students have to deal with all the time. Like, I'd love to go and study overseas, but it's going to set back my graduation. What would you say to that person who's hesitating about it, and for that very specific reason, like, it'll delay my graduation? What would you say to them?
I totally understand when people would scare you off with that premise, but I want to say to you, through my experience, is the story you will be able to tell by adding that extra year onto the course, the real world experience you will have. And usually when you go and pursue something out of your own initiative, it is exactly something that you want to do day by day. So the moment that you spend, the extra time you spend, will give you experiences and will put you ahead of all those students that would be just doing the classroom activity. When you step out of that classroom and apply your learning to the real world before you graduate, that is when you have the most empowering, not only university experience, but a preparation for the real world out there. Would recommend out of 10 every single time you ask me.
All right, so Hafi, let's keep talking. Let's talk about. We've talked a little bit about the uni, but tell me more about Hong Kong Poly, and we're going to drink coffee while we chat, which is exactly what we wanted to do to begin with.
So the Hong Kong Polytechnic University is really great for me because it is the most recognised optometry institution outside the United States, Australia and the UK.
Yep.
So coming here to like state-of-the-art facilities, a well-developed research centre, a functional clinic where people receive care, and at the same time education and training happens. So that was a pretty amazing opportunity for me to avail, and I was really excited to jump on board for it. When I arrived here, the response I got from the faculty was just amazing.
Yeah.
So my supervisor here at PolyU.
Yeah, you were saying like, so top institution, I mean, that's invaluable, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of experience.
Absolutely. When you're living in the moment, you sometimes don't see it from the outside. You see what's happening during it, but if you look at the bigger picture, I feel incredibly privileged and honoured to be able to do what I'm doing at the moment. And going back to my experience here, the supervisors, the faculty here has been extremely helpful. They have facilitated what I wanted to be able to achieve. So helping me recruit participants to be able to conduct my study, making resources and these thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment available, making sure their support and technology guys are available to me to be able to support me through the challenges I face, and providing me really access to all their different sections of their department was quite a special thing for me, because being able to be accepted that openly is not an experience that you have everywhere you go.
This is really true. And so, what's it like living here? Where are you living?
So I live on the university managed accommodation. There are 2 halls that PolyU runs, and I'm at the International Student Hall. It's great to be able to mix with the locals, and that's where I've been picking up most of my language skills, to be honest.
Yep.
So not only just living with the locals, but listening to their stories, their opinions and their views about Australia, their views about living in Hong Kong, their views on their life and the lives of expats in Hong Kong, for example. And for me, probably the best part is being able to travel locally with the locals, which is an experience that you don't get as a tourist, for example.
What's it like?
You get to know a little bit more about the place. You take that extra steps around the alleyway and you see something that you would for sure not see if you're just there as a tourist for following Google or following TripAdvisor. So, and just being able to go and, for example, I'm big on food, being able to go into a cafe that you would just walk past because you wouldn't see it in the way that they would tell you that how great it is. And I think being with the local, they have taught me the best way to explore Hong Kong is on foot. And that's how you have to do it. Stay away from the trains and stay away from the buses.
Nice.
And the trams. They're good to go on, they're good to get you to from point A to point B. But if you want to get the best of Hong Kong, travel Hong Kong on foot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And so in terms of food places, is there like a standout for you where you just like, if you are here, you have to visit this one place?
There are a few places.
Yep.
So Mr. Wong's in Mong Kok area, where we are right now. It's pretty good. There's on the other side of the island, the Hong Kong island, in the area of Sai Yung Pung or Causeway Bay. There are some really nice cafes around that area as well. I'll give Rob the addresses to those places.
Sounds good.
But for the audience as well. So if you're into your good fried chicken or that fried pork, if you really enjoy that, there's Yuan is here. That place actually you have to queue up, but they move pretty fast. You'll be in the line for 10 minutes, but you'll find a seat. So the place is Yuan is here, and that is a really nice place to check out some of the best food at a really good price you'll find in Hong Kong. And of course, if you want to try the high-end rooftop bars and you want to go to an area called LKF, that is also available as well. That's more for the night time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That sounds awesome. And so what's next then? I mean, you've obviously got like 4 or 5 months left here. You're going to be doing your research work. Incredible. Yeah. What else is part of the plan?
So something that's great about New Colombo Plan in designing those programs and plans we make in our journey, then in our New Colombo Plan stories, is the flexibility to travel not just to one country, but multiple destinations in the Asia and the Pacific region.
Yeah.
So in my field of optometry, I want to be able to go and do something within clinical optometry.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to a lot of guys, for example, in Fiji, Nepal, India, Pakistan, in Cambodia and in the Philippines, and we'll see where we finalize things, but they're essentially short-term activities, 1 week, 2 week, 1 month, and what we'll be doing is vision camps and detecting eye diseases in people, providing essentially optometry care, but getting to those rural towns in Nepal, for example, where they receive eye care probably 1 time a year, getting out to those clinics in Cambodia, for example, where they have equipment, but they don't have any operators or trained practitioners to work on those. And for example, for my own benefits, things like going to high volume hospitals in India or in Pakistan, where I'll get to see a lot of clinical experience, which I'll be obviously able to give back to Australia when I return and pay it forward.
It's just, I'm actually kind of a little bit lost for words by just how much that experience, like how far it's going to take you from Warren Ponds, which is a lovely place. Geelong's lovely, but like Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, maybe Nepal. I'm very passionate to Nepal. Cambodia, anywhere else in the region. And just as you're talking, I just think about the impact of your skills and knowledge, taking that out to like rural Cambodia, it would change lives.
Absolutely.
And then bringing that home.
Absolutely, and it goes back to something we were discussing before, is what I was able to learn in my classroom back home at Deakin to now where I am today, is that extra patience you see, it's the clinical expertise you gain, and it's those little individual cases you meet, and you're bound to stumble upon people whose lives you've essentially changed, and that will empower you, and that will make you, give you that passion you're looking for the rest of your life. That will make you get up every day and wanting to do what you are doing. And for example, in Hong Kong, and I'll share this story with you, I had a particular participant visit me as part of my research project. They weren't quite eligible to take part in the study, but they were really keen to get some eye care. And I was able to diagnose a condition they had that was undiagnosed for them, or it was misdiagnosed, for example, and for them to be able to know how easily it can be managed, just being able to get the right care. It's been transformational for them. They've actually written back to me about it as well, and we're at the moment in the process of getting them the right care. And this story would be quite close to me when I look back at it in 6 months' time, or when we have tangible outcomes for this person that's involved in it. For sure.
Yeah, it's like you've done your bit for the world, haven't you?
Exactly right. And to be able to do it at such a young age, to be able to do it so early in your careers as well, it just sets you up for life. It sets you up for a career that you sometimes question that if this is meant to be for you, and with experiences like this, you tell yourself and you tell others that you made a decision and it was absolutely the right decision for you.
Did you always know what you wanted to do? Like, you've clearly got passion for optometry, but did you always know that, or did you find that somewhere along the road?
I have to say I found it along the way. There were, to my friends back at Deakin, they know that there was a point in my degree where I stopped attending university because I thought this is not meant to be for me, and I must do something else in the same area of healthcare and being able to help people and being able to listen to people and being able to respond to them through help. But I thought optometry wasn't probably the right way, but I persevered and I stuck around for a few more months when things just started to change around, and I'm so glad I stuck around. This is probably 2 years ago now, but in the last 1 year I've had just my best time as part of my optometry education and training, and now being able to experience what I'm going through right now as part of the New Colombo Plan. Now I know that optometry was meant to be for me. Going back maybe 3 years when I finished high school, I really didn't know exactly the profession I wanted to uptake, but I always knew that I wouldn't be just doing one thing. Whatever I take up on, I just wouldn't be operating in the conventional or what the normal parameters of that job or that profession would be. I'll always be reaching out. I'll always be doing my own thing on the side as well. And I foresaw it in some sort of a healthcare medical area that I would be wanting to pursue. I did that. Optometry has been a truly rewarding journey for me so far.
So was there a point there that you were actually thinking about dropping out of uni?
Absolutely right. So when you often first start university, it's a huge transformation from high school to university.
Yeah.
Because
really
at the end of high school, you ask yourself, what do you want to do? And you make a decision, and you're like, I didn't think this is like a really big decision.
Yeah.
And the indicators don't show me that I've made the right decision. And there's no right way of measuring it. I thought I'd made the wrong decision. I'm from a regional town, Mandurah, from Western Australia, and I'd moved all the way to the eastern states, and I just didn't know if I was doing the right thing. And I had done some clinical work, like a short-term placement and work experience within optometry and ophthalmology before starting my course, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pursue optometry, but when I got into it, I didn't quite enjoy it at the very start in the way I thought it would be. But as soon as I entered my later years of training, the second year and third year, it was just absolutely where I wanted to be, and the experiences I was accumulating on the way was perfect definition of choice.
Was there a moment? Like, was there a kind of moment in there? Like, I'm really curious about this nexus, right? Because you've gone from a point 2 years ago, it's not very long, you know, where you're like, I'm done with this uni thing, like, this sucks.
Yeah.
To suddenly being like on the other side of the world in like literally the Australian government's most prestigious scholarship program about, fingers crossed, you know, big breakthrough, or interesting discovery, you know, even if it's not the breakthrough, like you've answered a big question. But then, was there a moment in there where you were just like, yes, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to persevere? Tell me about that moment.
So, I think it was a collection of events, not in particular a single moment.
Sure.
And those moments were me going through my own professional and personal development and finding out who I really was.
Yeah.
And those events were essentially times when I realized the power of education, the power of research, and the power this profession of optometry has. Mm-hmm. And what a noble profession I've been privileged to join. And what I really mean by that is, for example, through my research project, the impact it might have saving people's vision.
Yeah.
Or through my clinical practice, the kids that will have like eye issues detected at a young age and they wouldn't go blind throughout or later in their life. Or people who are older will be able to receive care which will stop them from going blind.
Wow.
And that profound effect that you can have on saving someone's vision and their quality of life, that realization of the impact and the power you have through the profession and through the services you're able to provide, that series of events going through that realization of what you're really doing is, I think, the collection of events and moments, if that's one way to put it, I've had. It wasn't a one particular moment per se.
Did you get to talk about that in your interview for the new Colombo Plan? Like that transition?
I did, and I think it's a powerful story.
It's a very powerful story. I can imagine, so I've been on that interview panel several times, and I can imagine just sitting opposite you, and suddenly I'm like, I get it, like, you know, because that's incredible.
And if you're an optometry student who is questioning where you are today, I'll highly recommend you get outside that classroom, come overseas for even just a 1 week. Get in touch with me. I'll find you a place for a weekend you can volunteer. I'll get you contacted with the right people. Get outside that classroom and you'll be exposed to opportunities that will be lasting with you for a lifetime, and you'll know that if you show that initiative, you'll be able to give back to the profession that has given you so much. Just the way that will be so much transformational and an awe-inspiring story to be able to tell the people you know.
Hey Hafi, I reckon that's a pretty good place for us to wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been so awesome to meet with you. Such a privilege to chat. Are you on Instagram, Twitter, anything like that? Where do people find you? Because you're going to be publishing, hopefully.
Hopefully. So a lot of the publishing would happen, and it would be shared on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, Hafi Khan, and that is also my Facebook, Hafi Khan. Not on Twitter just yet. Instagram's taking off a little bit, and Facebook is probably the best way, and I'm very happy to have people contact me on Facebook. So my name is Hafi Khan, Hafikhan, and I'd love to get to connect with you and chat to you about if any opportunities you would like to get involved in. I'd like to share your stories, and I'd like to share my story with you. So we'd love to get connected and would love to be friends with you all.
Man, well look, it's been an awesome, been a real privilege to hear your story so far, and I think what's exciting for me is seeing where you go next. Like this is a starting point, and I think that's a wonderful thing about this overseas study stuff. Is like we're chatting now, but this is like the beginning of an adventure. It's we always at our own reference point. We always kind of like feel like we're at the end of something. But this is just the beginning, so I'm really looking forward to seeing where you end up landing.
Absolutely.
Cool.
And thank you for having me today, Rob.
Of course.
And I think when we come out of the tunnel on the other side, when we look back, we'll know the change and the difference we've made, and I'm sure we can make people proud who have supported us throughout the journey, and people who have been with us throughout the journey.
That's right. Well, and we'll know where to get good coffee.
And we'll know where to get good coffee. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Happy, a true pleasure. That's it from us today. I'll see you next time on The Life That Travels. Take care.
Yeah. Subscribe, like, and
thank
thumbs
you.
up. Like, subscribe, and thumbs up to the video. Thank you.